distinguished guests and participants, your important mission as youth ambassador, especially in African cities, but also elsewhere in the developing world, will prove invaluable to us in our drive for better employment and capacity building, and other problems that threaten to derail equitable development and sustainable urbanization. Africa is the fastest urbanizing continent in the world today. The annual average urban growth rate is 4%, twice as high as Latin America and Asia. Already as we speak, 37% of Africans already live in cities, and by the year 2030, this is expected to rise to 53%. In short, by 2030, Africa will cease to be a rural continent. Research conducted by UN Habitat, the United Nations Agency for Cities and Other Human Settlements, of which, as you have heard, I'm executive director, shows that sub-Saharan Africa has the world's largest proportion of urban residents living in slums and in squalor. These slums are home to 72% of urban Africa's citizens. 72%. That percentage represents a total of 187 million people. These figures show that the locus of absolute poverty in Africa is shifting very rapidly to urban areas. In fact, slums are among the most dangerous living environments in the world. For example, it is estimated that there are around 90 infant deaths per 1,000 in urban slums, as compared to 76 in rural areas and 57 in the rest of the city. On a global scale, according to the International Labour Organization, young people constitute nearly a fifth of the world's population. Close to 85% of the 1 billion young men and women in the world, aged between 15 and 24, live in developing countries. Asia is home to 60% of these young people. Africa 15%, Latin America and the Caribbean 10%, and the remaining 15% are in the developing countries. In an age where young people are better educated than ever before, where they have a better knowledge of the world around them than their parents could ever have hoped for, they also face unprecedented problems of poverty, of discrimination and inequality. Thus, 40% of the world's 160 million unemployed people are young people aged between 15 and 24. And more than 130 million youths in this age group are illiterate. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, less than 20% complete secondary. This is why we are working to keep the kind of hope burning for young people, by investing in them and by consulting them. The exclusion of so many young people around the world from decision-making, from education, from health, and from basic services is both a violation of their human and civil rights and a failure of sound economic policy. To quote the great founding father of modern India, Mahatma Gandhi, many years ago said, and I quote, "If we wish to create a lasting peace, we must begin with the children," end of quote. Of the estimated 1 billion people living in slums and inner cities, more than half are comprised of youth under the age of 25, and 40% are estimated to be under the age of 19. They are the primary victims of poverty. Despite this potentially explosive situation, the problems of urban youth living in poverty are largely absent in urban policies and strategies. Furthermore, urban youths are too often perceived by public authorities as a problem rather than part of effective solutions. This is why more recently, the United Nations Secretary General Mr. Kofi Annan took Gandhi's message further when he said, and I quote, "Young people should never be seen as a burden on any society, but as its most precious asset," end of quote. We at the United Nations have long recognized that the world's youth are a resource for the advancement of societies. Indeed, they are often the leaders of social, political, and technological development. They should not be seen as a problem, but as a force for change. At UN Habitat, we see that the imagination, ideas, and energies of young women and men are vital for the continuing development of societies in which they live. There are many examples of many youth-led processes that are working and making a difference in society, even with minimal resources. So what is required is to provide them with an enabling environment that will facilitate the replication of these initiatives. Thanks to your efforts in that 15 to 24 age group, I am delighted to see that this youth forum is probably the largest one of the kind UN Habitat has been able to convene so far. This is an excellent example, young people setting the agenda to exchange views on what they deem important in the development of cities and towns. As young people, you have a pivotal role to play in helping us achieve the Millennium Development Goals, especially those pertaining to improving education, the health of women, forging new networks to reduce poverty, and not least, Target 11, which seeks, and I quote, to achieve significant improvement in the lives of at least 100 million slum dwellers by the year 2020. In Goal 8, which is environmental sustainability, where the leaders committed themselves to develop decent, productive work for youth. Young people have always been part and parcel of our work at UN Habitat. The Governing Council, comprising the governments which oversee us and set out our work program, enshrined this in the Resolution 20/1 on youth and human settlements. Our own Habitat Agenda partners, another framework to which world governments committed themselves, specifically comments in the Habitat Agenda that a participatory approach to promote employment, training, and crime prevention be given emphasis. The Habitat Agenda also stresses the role of young people in the alleviation of poverty and inequality. We have demonstrated this through projects such as One Stop Youth Information and Resource Center in Nairobi, where our agency is headquartered. It is run in partnership with the government, with the civil society organizations, the private sector, and the United Nations agencies. In just 3 years, the youth center in Nairobi has grown more than 7,000 young Kenyans. I am also happy to learn that such a center is to open here in Vancouver. And it gives me great pleasure to invite you to see some of their work on display at our World Urban Forum exhibition. Here, you will be able to see a fascinating gallery of life in the slums through pictures taken by young people, given cameras and assigned to tell their stories of life as they see fit. Slums, ladies and gentlemen, they are the incubators of talent. Most of it, unless we put our act together, will be wasted talent. For such initiatives to have a real impact on poverty reduction, it is essential that financial commitments to youth-led processes are substantially increased. Additionally, it would be useful to explore the power in forming strategic partnerships and alliances, because this task is too great for one single agency or government. We welcome your ideas here as the leaders of tomorrow. And finally, I wish to commend the Environmental Youth Alliance for hosting this forum's youth program. It is thanks in part to your efforts that today we are able to sign cooperation agreements with the Youth Build International and the Oslo Youth Information Center. All are working with us in Africa in a variety of projects and exchange programs. I really do hope that the signing of these agreements can contribute to the ideal of youth-led development, which is so essential to achieve the Millennium Development Goals. Nature dictates that youth have energy to spare and the eagerness to use it. Worldwide, young people are already dedicated to address their community's needs. Youth-led development offers the most cost-effective development action. Before handing the floor to President Risano, our new youth ambassador, I would like to invite the leaders of the organizations to sign our new cooperation agreements. And with that invitation, I also thank you so sincerely for your kind attention.